not nice is not being cruel. It's being true, right? So saying no, your friend saying no, or someone saying, I don't want to keep dating you, or whatever the thing is, that's not cruel. Cruel is a character attack. Cruel would be your friend saying, no, I don't like that idea, and I think that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. You're an idiot. That is not what we're talking about at all. That's unnecessary and doesn't do anything for relationships. But with directness, with firmness and kindness, saying, you know what, that doesn't sound like a good fit for me, is 100% honest and in no way cruel, even if the person initially has some upset about it. But what I love about your story, and I bet everyone listening can think of a moment like this in their life where initially you're upset, and then it turns out that it actually really serves you.
What does it mean to be a good person? If someone asks you to do something, do you have to do it? If someone invites you to hang out, do you have to make the time? If someone shares an idea, do you have to pretend to like it? Some people think that to be a good person, you have to be nice. You can't make someone upset. You can't hurt their feelings. So you withhold criticism. You don't express what you want. Eventually, you start to forget who you are, what's important to you, and what you truly want to get out of your life. If you're going to love your work, you need to be authentic. And that's hard to do if you're too busy people-pleasing to think about what it is you want. To be a good person, you don't have to be nice, at least not in the way many people think about what it means to be nice. In fact, to be a good person, you can't be too nice. I can think of a time when someone was not nice to me, and it was one of the best things that ever happened to me. I was trying to come up with an idea to present at the South by Southwest conference. I wasn't known for anything, but I had a number of accomplished friends who were authors or ran successful businesses. So what do you do when you have no credibility, but you know people who do? You put together a panel. You get well-known people together, you moderate a discussion amongst them, voila, you have a South by Southwest panel, a free badge, and that speaking appearance under your belt. So I came up with an idea for a panel, and I pitched it over email to one of my accomplished friends. And he got back to me so fast, like almost immediately, and I still have the email. It said, "Hey man, I appreciate the intro, but I don't think this is the best fit for me." I was really devastated for the rest of that day. But the very next day, I looked back over this email. I hated my life. I sighed. I really felt like a loser. And finally, I said to myself, okay, enough belly aching. Time to come up with a different idea. Now, this sounds like I'm making up this next thing. I swear to you, this is 100% true and not an exaggeration. The very next moment, the very next idea I had sitting on that picnic table on the porch of this cafe on Clark Street was for me to do a talk called Design for Hackers. And through the process of pitching that idea to South by Southwest, I got my first book deal to write a book called Design for Hackers. And that launched my career as an author. That changed my life. That took me from being just another whoever, nobody, to a respected, published, best-selling author. So it was all possible because my friend was not nice. He didn't try to protect my feelings. He didn't try to go along with something that wasn't right for him. He was authentic. By being authentic, he freed me up to be authentic. If he hadn't been honest, or if he had gone along with my first idea just to be nice, I would have been caught up doing something that wasn't right for me. So by doing what was right for him, my friend allowed me to do what was right for me. But how do you find the courage to do what's right for you, even if it might upset people in the short term? Dr. Aziz Gazipura is author of a great book. It's called Not Nice, Stop People Pleasing, Staying Silent, and Feeling Guilty, and Start Speaking Up, Saying No, Asking Boldly, and Unapologetically Being Yourself. And I love this book so much. It really helped me see the ways that I'm sometimes too nice in my life. I mean, there were all these moments where I was reading it and I was just like, oh my God, I do that. Or, oh my God, I think that. It just helped me see how it doesn't just hurt me to be too nice, it hurts others too. And more important, it helped me see the source of my motivations to be nice, the fear, the desire for approval. So that's what we're going to talk about today. In this conversation, you'll learn Dr. Aziz says, only apologize, quote, when you act out of accordance with your own values. Now, is that easier said than done? Dr. Aziz will show you how to start with an apology fast. And Dr. Aziz says, someone having hurt feelings does not automatically equal you doing something wrong. You could hurt someone's feelings by giving them a compliment. So, learn how to get over responsibility, as he calls it. You'll be more authentic. You'll ultimately help others get what they truly want. Dr. Aziz says, if you haven't asserted yourself very much, the idea that you're going to somehow glide into this really smooth way of telling people no and asking for what you want is a fantasy that's trying to deny the growth that's needed. So, learn what you can do today to start getting comfortable saying no, to ultimately have clearer boundaries, and to start living a more authentic life. Okay, here's Dr. Aziz Gazipura. I'm with Dr. Aziz Gazipura, who is author of Not Nice and Not Nice. I loved this book so much. It called out to me. It's a thing that I had been trying to communicate to people, but it didn't have the right words, and I always just came out feeling like a jerk when I would try to make the case that being nice can be kind of a dick move. So how do people normally react to this idea of not nice? And what's the misconception there?
The way people react to the idea of not nice versus someone being less nice is two very different things. So let me explain. So people hear, oh, be less nice. And they think, oh, that sounds bad. That maybe, that means you're going to be more of a jerk. You're going to be more selfish, more self-centered. The world doesn't need that. And so we're interacting with an idea there, a conception. But then in reality, when people are less nice in the way that I describe in the book, which is actually more direct, more assertive, more honest, more authentic, people tend to respond very well to that in relationships, in business, and work. So actually, in practice, it's very effective. But just the idea of it kind of makes people uncomfortable because they just have a misconception of what it means to be less nice.
Yeah. Maybe it's because we don't really have a word for it. It's like the opposite of being nice is being a jerk or being an asshole. There's not really a word for being unnice.
Yeah, which is why pretty early in the book, I say the opposite of nice is authentic. Because when people hear nice, and it is a problem of language because the word nice means a variety of things, but the way that I'm using it in the book and the way that when people think of themselves as being very nice or too nice is it's actually not kindness or generosity or love. It's fear. Because we might act more generous or I don't want to bother that person, so I won't ask them for anything. I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to upset anyone, so I'm not going to say what I want here. And we think we're being kind and accommodating, but actually we're scared. We're scared that if we are more assertive or we do ask for what we want, that people are going to be upset with us. They're going to say no. They're not going to like us. So we're scared of rejection. We're scared of a loss of relationships. We're scared of people feeling upset temporarily. And so we end up living a very narrow, polite, safe band of our possible behaviors. And as a result, people might say, oh, that you're being nice, but in reality, we're being inauthentic. We're being inhibited and restricted.
As much as I have recognized ways that being too nice or being treated too nice by other people has harmed me, I still find it difficult to let go of it. And there were a lot of things in the book where I was reading it and it was resonating with me so strongly. And that idea of that sometimes the niceness comes from fear was one of those things that made me realize that a lot of the sources where I feel like I'm trying to be nice is just because I'm scared. I'm just not being myself. So what are some of the other sources of inappropriately nice behavior?
The main source, probably the original source, is what I call nice conditioning, which comes from our upbringing. And that can be well-meaning parents just carrying out kind of normal cultural conditioning, the way that they were raised, the way that they look around and say, oh, this is what you're supposed to do with your kid. And it's, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. And there's a story I tell in the book, which is just one of hundreds I could pick. But I remember at one point I was at a playground with one of my young kids, and we were on the swings and I was pushing him. And then this family came over, and it was a dad and a mom and two kids. And the dad was pushing the little girl on the swing, and the mom was pushing the little boy. And the boy's like, I don't want mom to push me. I want dad to push me. And the dad was like, hey, don't say that about your mom. Like, be nice. And it's just such a small, subtle thing. But if you think about that, what is the dad communicating? Don't express your preference. Maybe that's going to hurt someone's feelings. Keep that to yourself. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. And imagine being kind of inundated in that, living in that water, in that ocean 24/7. And it can get a lot more direct and severe than that. Like if you're upset about something, you're upset, you're crying, I'll give you something to cry about. That's a common one that people have heard. So basically this messaging of don't have needs. Your needs bother me. You're a burden if you ask me for too many things. These are things that are communicated sometimes when parents are exasperated or, not as child-centric, not as capable to be as present or attentive as maybe we would hope. And as a result, people pick up like, hey, if I speak up for myself, I might get yelled at. Or they just observe the environment. I don't see my parents having assertive conversations with each other, so maybe you don't do that. And we just kind of absorb it. We get this conditioning, this environment. And the next result is we leave that environment with what I would call inaccurate maps of relationships, of human relations. It's like, if you speak up for yourself, bad things happen. If you ask for what you want, people get angry. If you say no, that's a terrible thing to do, and someone's going to be so hurt and angry with you. So we leave with all these inaccurate beliefs, this inaccurate map, and then we just kind of live that way for years because this is what you're supposed to do. And one other thing that gets put on, like the icing on the cake that really locks this pattern in place and makes it hard to shift is I have to be this way to be a, quote, good person. And our sense of morality and worthiness gets all wrapped up in this. And so if I were to say no to somebody, or if I were to ask for what I want or be more direct or something, not only am I afraid of damaging the relationship because of my inaccurate maps, I'm also like, I feel guilt or shame. I'm like, I'm such a bad human. And that goes deep right to our core, right to kind of a young sense inside of us. And so that can really lock some of these patterns in place.
Let's go back to this scene at the swing set, because I think that's a good example of a place that would be really in between. I mean, even you telling me that story, I'm thinking I probably would say the same thing to the kid. I'm not a parent, but what might be the right thing to say in a situation like that, where the child is very, maybe in I don't know a different word to say, but like not a nice way, saying, I don't want mom to push me. I want dad to push me.
It's not so much what to say as to how to think about the situation. In fact, so after Not Nice, I was kind of getting the feedback and seeing what was needed next, because that's what I always look for. And so my next book, which is coming out in February of 2020, is called Almost On My Own Side. And it's a deep look at why we've turned on ourselves, each of us. Why do we criticize ourselves? Why are we judgmental and impatient? And, honestly, treating ourselves much worse than we do with loved ones. And how do we shift that? And in there, I have a whole appendix on bringing that to parenting and for people who want to be with parents. So I answer a lot of those kinds of questions in there. But it's not so much what to say to that kid in the swing. It's like a whole mindset of, instead of my job as a parent is to kind of try to mold you into be a, quote, good person, which is nice, and just a lot more inherent trust in the goodness of your child. They're doing the best that they can, and they have thoughts and feelings, and I'm curious about their inner world. So I think the frame to come from in that situation is curiosity versus quick condemnation. So it would be like, I don't want mom to push me. And listen, I get it as a parent, like maybe your feelings are hurt. My younger son, who's 3 going on 4, has taken a liking to one of my friends who ended up living with us for about a month. And man, my younger son bonded with him so deeply, and he can be so fun and funny and dynamic. And my son started calling him New Daddy. And he'd be like, I'm sitting in the kitchen with him, and he's like, Daddy, he's talking to me. I like you, but I like New Daddy more. So he's just communicating these things. And I smile when I hear it because I'm just curious about it. So that's what I would say in the swing set. I'd say, I don't want mama to push me. Oh yeah? How come? Or what do you want? Tell me more. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean you have to give it to him. Or everything the kid wants. It's like, sure, take it. But it's just like, oh, your need or your desire is worthy, is worthwhile, is worth hearing, just like any humans is. And then we can decide if that works for everyone. But so there's this, instead of shutting something down or trying to steer it, is really allowing it and being curious. And in fact, that's what led me to write this next book almost, is because I saw, most of us are just trying to jam ourselves into this box of how we're supposed to be all the time. And we're not curious. We're talking to someone at a networking event or a dinner party or whatever. And inside we're like, I don't like this. And we're not curious. We're not like, oh yeah, what don't you like about this to ourselves? We're like, I should be more outgoing. I should be more social. Why am I so impatient with people or whatever? And we're just trying to jam ourselves in. So I think that starts childhood, and then we just carry it forth long after we've left home and aren't around our parents anymore.
I think that's a great way of putting it, is that, well, niceness can be a barrier to curiosity. It can be a barrier to the truth. And then that makes it very difficult to have authentic relationships and authentic interactions, which makes it difficult to have an authentic society. It creeps into all the nooks and crannies. It reminds me of, I don't know if you've ever seen this Black Mirror episode where everybody, in every single interaction, you hold up your phone and you rate the person, and you rate them like 5 stars. And it's too real. Basically, everybody's walking around. I'm sure a lot of our listeners have seen it. Apparently you have not. But everybody's just, oh, that was so great all the time. And I'm thinking, this is not that different from the actual world. And I, for one, find it very confusing and difficult to deal with people when you sense that they're being nice and it's fake, but you don't know whether they're being nice and it's fake because they're trying to hide how they actually feel, or because they don't know themselves how they actually feel.
Yeah. It could just be a default pattern they're running to not upset anyone, to keep the peace, to feel like they're a good person.
So then we never get to the truth. Like, I mean, I can think of one example of a time when it was very helpful to me that somebody was not nice. I was pitching a friend who was very accomplished on an idea, and he very quickly said, no, that doesn't sound like a good fit. And I was very upset about that. But then I had a different idea that would not have been possible if he had accepted this idea that was not for him. And that turned out to be a career-defining idea, the idea for my very first book. And so you can't, yeah. And so that was an experience that made me think, well, where are the other places where I'm not saying no to somebody and I'm harming them? So not saying no or being nice can be harmful.
It raises such a great point how, saying, like, being not nice is not being cruel. It's being true, right? So saying no, your friend saying no, or someone saying, I don't want to keep dating you, or whatever the thing is, that's not cruel. Cruel is a character attack. Cruel would be your friend saying, no, I don't like that idea, and I think that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. You're an idiot. Like something like, and then we've all seen that, someone being really aggressive and character attacking someone. And yeah, that is not what we're talking about at all. That's unnecessary and doesn't do anything for relationships. But with directness, with firmness and kindness, saying, you know what, that doesn't sound like a good fit for me, is 100% honest and in no way cruel, even if the person initially has some upset about it. But what I love about your story and I bet everyone listening can think of a moment like this in their life where initially you're upset and then it turns out that it actually really serves you.
Right. And I think that what holds me back, or what I struggle with, and I think is what a lot of other people struggle with, is communicated in this quote from the book. If you're upset or angry, it's because I've done something wrong. If you're disappointed or sad, I must have fallen short or done something to let you down. If you're hurt, I must have said it wrong or done something wrong. It's all my fault. Your feelings are my fault. I did this to you, and now it's my responsibility to fix them, and fast. So,
yeah.
Where do we go wrong when we're thinking that?
Yeah. I mean, it's a painful way to live. And I'm laughing because, I will put certain sections of my own audiobook of this book on when I'm driving somewhere. Like just the other day, I was going to a team meeting and I was going to need to make some clear, I had boundaries I needed to set with some people on the team. And I was like, I know what I need. I like an injection of encouragement to have boundaries. And so I'm listening to the boundaries chapter in the book. And so I'm laughing because when you're describing that, I'm like, oh yeah, I can fall into that, especially with my wife or children, saying no to them and disappointing them. And it's like this, ugh. So, I believe this is a never ending journey. However, we can get a lot more liberated when we let go of what I call over responsibility, which is really what's captured in the section that you read there, which is I am responsible for your feelings. And that could be, you, I'm just talking to you here. That could be a friend of mine. That could be my spouse. That could be my employer or employee. That could just be a stranger that I just met. And whatever it is, whoever you are, whoever's in my world now, I'm responsible, which means any quote negative feeling you have, which means something that's unpleasant or painful for you, is my fault. And it's like this background default assumption that's occurring. And people don't ever really slow down to examine and see that that's not true. That we do not, well, there's a couple of errors with that. One is that's taking a lot on. And that makes you very much at the whim of other people. Like if you can't, if I'm not allowed to upset you, then I'm going to have to override my own desires, my own impulses, my own urge to say no. Like your friend from that example, I would have to say yes to your idea. Even if it didn't feel like it fit for him and his business, he'd have to say yes because he can't upset you. So you really give away your power when you're taking over responsibility. And the second sort of pitfall with that default assumption is you really don't have that much control over other people's feelings. Even if you think, well, if I say yes to them right now, so they won't be disappointed, that doesn't mean they're not going to be disappointed forever. It's a temporary thing. Like, what about the next day? What about 5 minutes later? What about the fact that they got what they wanted from you, but they're still dissatisfied because they're having a bad day or they have negative thoughts or who knows what's going on in other people. And so and you can see this because I lived this for many years and I help a lot of clients with this now. When someone's been running that over responsibility pattern, they're afraid, they're exhausted. Even if they look like they have it together, there's so much anxiety and stress building up inside and then resentment because on some level they're like, geez, I have to be beholden to all these people, screw them. So then they're trying to keep that down too because that's not nice. And their nerves are worn out because it's a very taxing way to live.
I like what you mentioned about resentment, and you were talking in the book about how this can actually cause physical pain. Like, what are the ways that carrying this burden of feeling that you are responsible for how people feel, what are the ways that can manifest itself that might not be so obvious?
This one was really something that blew my mind when I discovered it because I got diagnosed with chronic pain when I was younger, and then I always had some condition happening, and I got all different kinds of medical diagnoses and different treatments, and I was always kind of chasing the symptoms for literally 15, 20 years until I discovered this stuff. And it was that emotion can cause physical ailments in our body, which now that I see that and have had enough evidence of that and have studied that enough in medical literature, it's sort of a obvious thing to me that our mind affects our body and our body affects our mind. But there's still kind of a gap, I think, in some of the medical community that makes this distinction. But it can show up, and here's how. It stresses your nervous system to be suppressing a lot. So that moment when someone's like, hey, do you want to go do that thing? And inside you're like, no, I don't. And then you're like, okay, I will. There's going to be this like tension inside of you right in that moment. Even if you put a smile on your face and you try to have good thoughts about it and you tell yourself, you know what, it's good for me to give to this person because blah, blah, blah. That's all on the surface. Underneath, there's going to be a tension in your body. And it might just be like a squeezing in your chest or a little thing in your stomach. No big deal, just an emotional tension. But that's just one moment. You start to accumulate more and more and more of those. And then meanwhile, you're suppressing your truth. So you want to say to someone, you know, I'm frustrated when you keep showing up late to these meetings. This is not working for me. I'm on time and I feel like you're not respecting my time. Like, so you want to say something like that, but that's not nice. So you suppress that. Now there's another contributor. So think of it like a cup and each thing's a little drop in the cup and you got more and more and more and more. And you're just running that suppression, that tension 24/7. And what ends up happening is your body starts to react to that. And specifically, one way that your body can do it, and the good news is a lot of the pains that emerge are not majorly damaging in your body. It's not like you've damaged your heart organ or something. The pain is actually, it's really fascinating defense mechanism. So what's happening is you're getting all this tension building, all this stuff that wants to come out. And what's going to happen is you're going to blow. You're going to become really aware of your resentment, of your anger, of all the things you want to say. And your nice programming is like, oh my God, that's unacceptable. We're going to lose all our relationships. And so what it does is your body starts to create a physical symptom as a distraction mechanism. And that physical symptom will just absorb your attention. And anyone who's got any pain, whether it's neck pain or back pain or stomach pain or something, it absorbs your attention 100%. It's like hard to focus on anything else. All you're thinking about is the pain. When's it going to go away? What caused it? What medicines do I need? What chiropractor I need to go to? And so now you're totally absorbed in that. And that's where I lived for, decade plus. And so I discovered the work of a physician named Dr. John Sarno, who I think is just a pioneer in mind-body medicine. There's others as well. But that's a great one to start with, Dr. John Sarno. And anyway, I discovered this whole pattern. And with that, I was able to resolve. Me personally, I know that it can manifest in hundreds of ways, but just my own personal laundry list was jaw pain, temporomandibular joint issues, headaches. I would lose my voice sometimes, on and off, lots of stomach pain, irritable bowel syndrome, chronic back and spine and nerve pain, neck pain, wrist pain, carpal tunnel syndrome, plantar fasciitis in my feet, knee pains. I could go on, but it was just like wherever my body could create that stuff. And it's pretty mind blowing to people who haven't heard about it, but like literally all of these things were 100% resolved when I got that connection between niceness and perfectionism and all those stresses we put on ourselves and physical pain.
Now I can hear already some of my listeners' eyes rolling in the back of their heads as they hear you talk about that. And I've been familiar with Dr. Sarno's work and saw the 2020 segment that you linked to in your book. Was there new research about this? I believe it, but I know that it's very difficult for people to accept this idea that, I have this back pain or whatever, and it's because of repressed rage or something.
Yeah, I know. It's a leap. And there's more and more research on it. What's his name? Dr. Howard Schubiner and Alan Gordon are two. One's a physician, one's a social worker who works more on the sort of mind approach to it. But they've done more research. Dr. David Schechter is another one. Yeah, it's like a burgeoning field that is, it has a lot of momentum because it works, but it is in opposition to deep programming that we've gotten from a very young age, which says that if you got something physical, if you have physical pain, then it's a structural or biological issue that can only be fixed with a chemical agent or a structural manipulation.
Right.
And, it's a good starting premise, but then when it doesn't work, then how do we want to expand that? And really and I've talked about this with lots and lots of people, of course, over the years. And I find that people are ready for that idea when they've reached a certain threshold of pain, really. And it's got to they got to be at a point where they've tried. That's usually the case when someone finds this stuff. It's like they've tried a lot of stuff or they need to get a surgery and then that didn't work. And as I did personally, I got a surgery for my wrist and other things. And eventually people are like, you know what? I'll let go of my pride. I'll try this. Why not? And then then a beautiful door opens.
Yeah, the potential for harm of trying something like that is pretty much zero, other than your time or the $15 it costs to buy a book such as that. And it's also one of these things that probably doesn't fit too well in the paradigm of we're going to have a double-blind, placebo-controlled study, because it's kind of hard to double-blind that and placebo-control that.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, is the research of it. And I think that you said the risk or the kind of cost is just, time and a small amount for the book. I'd actually say that it's a much, much greater cost in it. And that's why people have a skeptical or very dismissive reaction instead of one of curiosity. It's because if the premise is true, then it's not just, you don't just read the book. Like, you have to examine your way of living in the world. And this whole nice person frame you have, or this perfectionism. And, you don't have to solve it all and somehow become a different person, but you have to take a look at where am I upset in my life? If my back is hurting all the time, who might some part of it, there's a part inside of me that maybe I don't listen to very much. Maybe it's like my more immature side of me that is angry. In fact, Dr. Sarno talked about that if the pain was due to structural damage, then we should see progressively more pain as people get older, right? So people in their 40s would have more than the 30s. People in their 60s would definitely have more. And he found that wasn't true at all. Actually, the pain was the greatest between the ages of 30 and 50 or 30 and 55, which he called the years of responsibility. And that's when people are, moving up in their career, raising kids, having a family, and, trying to manage. It's like the most stressful years for a lot of people. And, and I've discovered this. It's like when I have pain in my body and something's coming back, I sit down and I'm like, okay, who am I upset with? What am I upset about? And sure enough, there's a part of me that's is angry at needing to make breakfast for my kids and take care of the dogs when my wife goes and works out. That's our agreement. I work out earlier and she works out, when I'm a little later in the morning. And I totally want to do that. I'm 100% on board with that. It feels very fair to me. I get to work out. She does. It's good for everyone's health. That doesn't matter. There's a part of me inside when there's a lot of demands. It's like, I don't like this. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't need to make that go away. I just need to make it conscious and just be honest with myself. And I talk about this in the book, Not Nice. There's a chapter called Own Your Shadow, which is the side of you that's the dark side, the side that is angry at people that you love, or that's greedy, or that's impatient, or all those things that we, that we don't want to present to the world. And all you need to do is turn and look at that part, journal and write from that part. Go for a walk and talk to that part of you that's irrationally angry at, your friend because they have more money than you or whatever. And just be conscious of it, own it. And all of a sudden, not only do you have a lot of power to be more assertive from a Not Nice perspective, but also it's, phenomenal at resolving body pain too.
Back to this idea of being responsible for people's feelings. I feel like I see this in our current political climate. It's very different, media, social media, etc., from interpersonal relationships. There's some different dynamics there, but people, it seems like they think, oh, if I upset somebody, then they're censoring me. They can't deal with upsetting somebody. And that's something that I struggle with. Now, one thing that I have thought about, thanks to your book, that has really helped me process this is this idea that we all have our own different version of reality. And knowing what I know and what I've talked about on the podcast about cognitive biases and such, that makes so much sense, is that I might have a version of reality and I might decide that I have a boundary and that might upset you, but you have a different version of reality. And both of our versions of reality are shaped by the biases that we have. And so there's no way to know that I hurt your feelings, and so therefore I did something wrong. So is that something you can talk about?
Yeah, well, just to that last point, if you someone having hurt feelings does not automatically equal you doing something wrong. That's like a chain that's like a logic chain that we always assume, but it's, and a great example of this is you could hurt someone's feelings by giving them a compliment. You could say, hey, I love your book. I thought it was really, brilliant. And in that moment, in their head, they think, oh, this person's just saying this because they're patronizing me. My book wasn't that brilliant. Come on. I mean, they're just saying that. And then they feel like deflated and inferior in that moment in their head, in their heart. And you're trying to give them a compliment. So it's like, we just don't have that level. As you said, everyone's in their own reality. So we just don't have that level of control or even knowing exactly what they're doing. And so trying to read into that everywhere we go, we're just making stuff up. We're just guessing. Oh, I bet they're going to react this way. Oh, I bet that would hurt their feelings, so I better not do it. But we really, really don't know. And there's this beautiful moment that I've heard definitely from clients that I've worked with, but even we'll get letters about the book and emails and stuff. And people will reference this kind of magic moment where they're kind of building up to do something. And it seems like such a big deal. Like, I'm going to go tell, my boss, I need this thing differently, or I'm going to tell this to my partner. And oh boy, this is so different than how I've been. And then they gear up. They imagine it's going to be this big conflict or fight. And then they express what they want. And the other person's like, okay. And then they're like, it's almost like they were, trying to push against a brick wall and it's just a curtain and they sort of stumble over and they're like, okay. All right then. And it's because everyone's in their own reality. And to that other person, it might not even seem like such a big, egregious thing that you're asking for. It's just you saying what you want. It makes sense to them. And that's a beautiful thing to see because it can help us work with that anxiety of starting to speak up more and see that oftentimes it's really just going to be this no big deal thing that people not even react to.
Another quote from the book that I think captures all of this very well. We can start to assume that anything that might lead to a negative reaction or uncomfortable emotion in someone else is inherently wrong and a bad thing to do. So instead of having only more extreme things on our bad list, like yelling or harshly criticizing others, we start to add things like asking for what we want, disagreeing with someone, telling someone we don't like something or are upset, and on and on. And this is what happens. I mean, I've definitely experienced this and struggled with it myself. So can we get into some ways to find our way out of this? We were just talking about the shadow journal, which I think is great. I know that personally every morning I have a little cheap portable word processor that I write 100 words in before I even get out of bed, and I can write anything I want in there, and I delete it, and sometimes it's something from my shadow. I also liked this idea of counting your sorries. Do we say sorry too much?
Yeah, I call it the apology fast. And this is because when we're overly nice, not only are we inhibiting what we say and not asking for what we want and saying yes instead of no and all that, we're also habitually apologizing. And that could be in kind of unconscious language patterns. Like, hey, I'm sorry to bother you, but can I ask you a question? And we think that's polite or that's nice or that's good or something. But actually, it's if you really pay attention to it and the way it's used, there's sort of a apologizing for your existence.
Well, wait, let's unpack this. Let's unpack this idea of sorry, I'm bothering you. I just realized this. It's I'm sorry, but I'm doing this thing. It's as if I were hitting you over the head and saying I was sorry while I was doing it. We're saying sorry for this thing and we're doing it anyway.
Yeah.
What's the problem there?
Well, it's just, it's just really showing that nice is not the same thing as authentic, considerate, and so forth. It's like, don't be upset with me. That's what we're saying right there.
Mm-hmm.
Please don't be upset with me. Can I ask you a question? Please don't be upset with me. I'm going to say no here to you. And so we're just replacing that with sorry. And the assumption is always that we're bothering, we're burdening, we're interrupting, I think this is this kind of distorted perception that we can have when we're too nice is we see ourselves as this like maniac, bold, bowling people all over and aggressive and doing all these things. And in reality, we're actually extremely narrow, small, tiptoey, and restricted. And then in imagining that we're knocking things over every time we ask someone or say something and we have to apologize for it. So it's a very distorted view that we can have of ourselves.
So how do we stop saying sorry so much?
One of the best things to do with that is a behavioral intervention where you count your apologies. It depends on, over the course of a day or maybe a week or something like that, Monday through Friday, and just have a little note file on your phone or something where you apology count. And then every time you notice it, just add a number to that and see what you get at the end of the day. See what you get after 5 days. And that's your baseline. And then you say, okay, you know what? I'm going to go on a 3-day apology fast or a 7-day apology. I mean, keep it something under a week because then you can really actually have intention on it. And then notice, and what ends up happening is this just calls people's attention to the moments that they do it. And inevitably, if someone is apologizing a lot, the fast won't mean that they stop. It just means they become aware at first. But what we've seen, and doing this with numerous clients, is that the first couple of days or whatever, they're just a lot more conscious. They notice it. Sometimes they're like, I saw the moment. I thought I didn't want, here's a chance to not apologize. And then it just like burst out of me. So that's interesting to see the kind of the compulsive nature of it. But then invariably, we've done this with a lot of people. And, after a relatively short period of time, a few days, they've cut it way down. And across the board, the most common feedback we get about what the effect is they feel more powerful, which I think is really interesting. And I've heard things about like, I can make more eye contact with people. I walk taller. I carry myself differently. These are all the feedback we get. And it's because they're not operating as if everyone around them is like an authority and an angry parent that could yell at them. They're just peers. They're equals. They don't have that power over us.
Mm-hmm. And surely there are things worth apologizing for. If I spill coffee on your laptop, I am going to apologize to you profusely, but we're usually not spilling coffee on people's laptops. So is there any middle ground between that and maybe acknowledging that I'm interrupting you, etc.? Are there ways to do that? I don't know how to put this right. Like there's this certain type of self-help stuff you see sometimes where it's kind of a fake it till you make it thing, and it's very transparent and very false.
Yeah, you don't want to be like kind of an
inconsiderate,
aggressive kind of, I'm entitled to apologize to no one kind of thing. Yeah. I mean, I think there are moments to apologize. In fact, that's what we talk about in the book with the apology fast, is that we're eliminating unnecessary apologies, which is the vast majority of them. They're habitual. And the things to apologize for is actually a relatively short list. It's when you act out of accordance with your own values and, say something that doesn't feel like what you believe or mean. You say something out of frustration or anger or upset. You fall short or break an agreement with someone through like intentional or just you forget about it or something like that. And it has an effect on somebody because you didn't follow through on what you said you were going to do. I think those are very legitimate reasons to apologize. I would be questioning apologizing for interrupting just during the apology fast, because it may not be upsetting people in the way that you think. It may not be a major problem. You might think you're interrupting when you're not. Like there's a natural give and take in the conversation and you could just jump in. So for the fast, I would hold off on that. But those first ones I mentioned are the main things that you could apologize for. And then the rest, let it ride.
Well, let's say maybe post-fast, is there any good non-apologizing way to acknowledge that maybe I'm interrupting you, or acknowledge that I'm aware that I'm interrupting you so you don't think that I'm somebody who just bowls you over all the time and interrupts you in every single meeting and I'm a bull in a china shop?
Yeah, I'd say the best way to communicate to people that you're not going to bowl over them in every single meeting is to not bowl over them in every single meeting and let your behavior communicate a lot more than your specific language patterns. And, by having a stance of curiosity and inclusivity and listening, and they feel heard by you often. And then sometimes you say, hold on a second, I want to jump in here because I want to ask you a question.
That's good.
And that's, and my tone is respectful there. It's, hold on a sec, or can I jump in here? I want to ask you a question. Notice that there's an asking, there's a permission in that example.
Yes.
And they're very respectful, but there's no apology because there's nothing to apologize for because I've not done anything wrong.
And it eliminates this sorry, and I'm doing this thing anyway. Kind of contradiction that there is. You just ask, can I hit you over the head with this bat? No. Okay, well, I won't do it then.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of saying no, practicing saying no is also a good way to take yourself out of being too nice.
Yeah.
How can we do that?
I love the questions you're bringing forth, and I'll answer that in just one second, is that the only way to do this is to practice it. The only way to become more authentic it's a muscle. And if we've been nice for a long time, it's atrophied and we don't even know who we are or what we think. I've heard this a lot and I relate to it a lot as well. It's like people decide they want to be less nice and they're like, I don't even know what I think. I don't even know what I feel. I don't know. I'm just so oriented towards others for so many years. And so it's kind of this process of rediscovery. And the only way to do it is to be willing to be a beginner, to be willing to be messy. There might be friction. It might be an uncomfortable conversation. You might not do it perfectly. In fact, you won't. If you haven't asserted yourself very much at all in your life, the idea that you're going to somehow glide into this really smooth way of, telling people no and asking for what you want and stuff, that's just a fantasy that's trying to deny the growth that's needed. So I'd say, be willing to be messy, get in there, and through repetition, we'll get better and better. And that's true for no too, because so the basics is set a criteria for that you're going to say no, say twice this week, and look for those opportunities and find them. And you'll find them in your personal life, in dating or relationships or at work. You'll find them, and then practice saying no. And initially, when people do this, sometimes their no's are scary. They feel very anxious as they do it. And so one way they deal with that, there's two ways that people deal with that are a necessary part of the beginning process. But over time, you can let these go. The first one is a lot of reasons and qualifiers and sorries. And, here's why I can't. And it's because of this. And I'm sorry. And I totally would. But, so you really reduce those as best as you can over time. And just say, I'm not going to be able to make that. Or your friend, like, that doesn't seem like the best fit for me. And if someone has more questions, why not? Well, here's why. You can explain it, but you don't have to do that ahead of time. And, you might not even need to. In fact, I've coached people in our group program around this, and they're ending a relationship and dating. And they feel like they have to give 1,001 reasons why they want to end this dating relationship instead of saying like, no, this doesn't feel like it's the best fit for me. Or this isn't working for me. And so you don't have to give a whole lot of endless explanations.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Aziz Gazipura, author of Not Nice. And I have to say the subtitle of this, because it's great. Stop people pleasing, staying silent, and feeling guilty, and start speaking up, saying no, asking boldly, and unapologetically being yourself. And one last quote from it that I love that resonated with me so much, because sometimes I need to remind myself of this. I have a right to be here. I belong here. I am me and I matter, not because I'm the smartest or the best or perfect, just because permission was granted by my birth. And where would you like for people to get more of you? Do you have a final message for our listeners?
I love it. Yeah, thanks for sharing that quote. So the best place to find out more would be to go to socialconfidencecenter.com. It's my website, socialconfidencecenter.com. Has all the information about all my books, including the new one that's going to be coming out in February of 2020. You can also go to my YouTube channel and podcast from that website. And that's just a wealth of free information. And then, of course, if people want to go further, there's live events and group programs and all kinds of stuff. So you can start there for any resources you want around confidence and how to be less nice and more you. And that would be the final message that I'd love to share with everyone here is that's put simply, that's what this journey is about. It's being less nice, less of who you think you're supposed to be, less of that caged version of you, and instead being more of who you really are. It's safe to be you. You're allowed to be you. the world wants you to be you. Those in your life hunger for that. And the more you can have the courage to test that out and bring that out, the better you'll feel, the more free you'll feel, the better your relationships will become. I mean, in all ways, the better your life will be. So I know it's scary and I know there's a leap of faith involved here, but man, on the other side, it is so worth it. And I encourage everyone to begin and keep going in that process.
Dr. Aziz, thank you so much. I hope that conversation with Dr. Aziz Gazipura has you thinking about setting clearer boundaries and living a more authentic life. You really can be a better person by not being nice. It's time for the Love Your Work Listener Showcase. This month, we're featuring Jeffrey Mason. Jeffrey self-publishes books and tools that help create conversation, break down barriers, and inspire expanding one's parameters. You can learn more at www.jeffreymason.com. You may also recognize Jeffrey's name because he's one of our top Patreon supporters. So if you see Jeffrey on the street, say thank you. If you'd like to have your work featured in the Love Your Work Listener Showcase, fill out the short application at kdv.co/showcase. That's kdv.co/showcase. How do you feel on Monday morning? Are you geared up and excited about the week ahead, or are you struggling to get started? Either way, how would you like to start off your week with a dose of inspiration? I've collected more than 15,000 highlights studying the lives of history's greatest creators, and each Monday in my Love Mondays newsletter, I share the very best nuggets of wisdom I've found. Sign up at kdv.co/Mondays. That's kdv.co/Mondays. At the core of being able to love your work is one question. Where does the money come from? Does the work you do make humanity better? Do the products you use help you grow as a person? That's why supporting Love Your Work on Patreon is good for all of us. I can focus on making a great show so you can become a better human. It's an honest exchange, value for value. This show costs hundreds of dollars a month to produce and bring to your ears. I invest my time and creative energy in making it, so I can't keep this show going without your support. Please support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/Cadavy. Think of it like a coffee meeting. Is this show worth buying me a coffee a month? Head to patreon.com/Cadavy to join. You'll get perks such as early access to ad-free content, masterclasses, or office hours directly with me. That's patreon.com/Cadavy, or Overcast users, just tap on the $sign. Love Your Work is brought to you in part by our top Patreon supporters, such as Jeffrey Mason. The theme music for Love Your Work is At Sea by Dorena from the album About Everything and More, by arrangement with Deep Elm Records at deepelm.com. Love Your Work is a production of Cadavy, Inc.